Good morning. Good Sunday morning, everyone. We're starting a new book today, uh, Homemade Magic. And this edition, anyway, says The Musings and Mischief of a Do-It-Yourself Magician. Now, before we start, uh, let me say that yesterday's reading that finished off this with the Gnostic Mass went about 45 minutes. And Constance joined me uh, yesterday. So uh, I assure you that these readings most likely will not go that long every day. Thank you. So I know many of you uh, tuned in yesterday and have seen yesterday's in replay. Uh, but I have to congratulate you on your heroics for sitting through 45 minutes of reading. And I pledge myself to try not to go that long again. Now, let me say something about this book. First of all, technically, it is out of print. At the moment, it is out of print. Now, this was first published in 2014, which meant I started writing it probably sometime in 2012. And it's from my good friends at Llewellyn Publication. I did one other book with Llewellyn, which was Low Magic, which I've already read for us. And this was my second Llewellyn book. And it did okay, you know. I really love it. And but for one reason or another, Llewellyn has allowed it to go out of print and allowed me to write and arrange and create a new edition of it, which is coming out very soon from my good friends at Next Millennium, the publisher of my tarot deck. So I'm enlarging and redoing Homemade Magic, and I'm in the process of doing that right now. Nevertheless, when that new edition comes out, it would probably not be the best idea in the first year or so that book, the new edition, is out, for me to be reading that one complete with the new material on my Facebook page, so as to not to take the wind out of the new publication. So I'm going to read as it first appeared in the Llewellyn edition. The new edition may actually be titled a little different, because more accurately, this is My Life with the Spirits, Part 2. Okay, it's very autobiographical in nature, and it truly is My Life with the Spirits, Part 2. So we may tinker with the title and the subtitle, or the subtitle of the book. So, are you ready for a nice short introduction? There's lots of pictures in the book. Personal pictures, family pictures, because it's homemade magic. Kids, everything. So if you're interested in how magic in a regular life is, and not just textbook magic, and this book is intended to show how magic is actually applied, at least in one person's life. So, Lon Milo DuQuette, Homemade Magic, Musings and Mischief of a Do-It-Yourself Magus. Okay, it starts off here with that picture of Constance's dream board. with the caption, "Intent is the mechanics through which spirit transforms itself into material reality." Deepak Chopra. And this is Constance's dream board, placed squarely over our washing machine. This little book is dedicated to the talented, generous, supportive, and forgiving friends and brethren who have since 1975 taught Constance and me everything. All that is good and true, awesome and holy has poured like liquid light from the cornucopia that is the love of these dear souls. Most especially to our dear friends and fellow homemade magicians, Doug and Karen James, Steve and Judy Abbott, we say thank you. We are so lucky to have once again incarnated with you. Special thanks also go to Hymenaeus Beta, Frater Superior of Ordo Templi Orientis, for his kind permission to print the various excerpts from the works of Aleister Crowley, and to North Atlantic Books for permission to print material adapted from the translation of Blas Daniel Staples' The Homeric Hymns to Demeter, originally published in The Road to Eleusis, Unveiling the Secret Mysteries, by Gordon Wasson, Albert Hoffman, and Carl A.P. Ruck. 30th anniversary edition published by North Atlantic Books. Okay. Then there's a table of contents, which I will skip. And this morning we'll read the prologue, dedication. Nebraska Maids. Little epigram is from Willa Cather. It does not matter much whom we live with in this world, but it matters a great deal whom we dream of. That's Willa Cather, who was a Nebraskan, in her work, The Gold Slipper. Like my father and brother before me, I was born in Southern California and journeyed to rural Nebraska to find a bride. There's something primeval and mammalian about being born and raised in one part of the world, then traveling to some strange and exotic land to fall in love and find a mate. Indeed, many classic fairy tales tell of a wandering prince who wins his dream princess in a foreign land. Obviously, I'm not a prince. And Nebraska isn't exactly strange or exotic. But for a 7-year-old boy, rudely uprooted from his home in sunny Southern California, the Cornhusker State in 1956 was a grotesque nightmare. I felt like a shell-shocked war refugee, cruelly banished from my beachfront homeland and exiled to a dusty, chigger-infested, if you don't know what a chigger is, it's a little bug that burrows its head into your flesh. Okay. I'll start over again. I slipped into bitterness. I felt like a shell-shocked war refugee, cruelly banished from my beachfront homeland and exiled to a dusty, chigger-infested wilderness populated by coarse barbarians who didn't trim the fat off their ham sandwiches, considered Jell-O with a dollop of mayonnaise to be salad, and for some strange reason called lunch, dinner. I languished for a full decade in small-town Nebraska, fantasizing that I'd be rescued by flying saucer and plotting my escape back to the hip and trendy land of my birth. At night I dreamed I smelled the beach. I actually tasted the salt of the ocean on my dream tongue. Throughout my decade of Nebraska exile, California grew in my imagination into a mythical Ithaca. But unlike the hero Odysseus, I had no queen waiting for me on the golden shores of my lost kingdom. For that elusive treasure, I would need to grow up and find a Nebraska woman. Perhaps it's because Nebraska breeds a very special woman. The kind of woman who stoically endures some of the most brutal winters on Earth for months on end, when bitter Arctic winds blast down from Canada and sweep through the Dakotas, foiled by nothing higher than prairie grass. The kind of woman who, when the mercury tops a humid 110 degrees, will wash her hair in the kitchen sink and blithely brush it dry on the back porch. The kind of woman who, without blinking an eye, will lance a boil, staunch a bleeding wound, or gut a fish. The kind of woman who will, with firm and loving hands, tenderly end the life of a suffering dog or cat. Despite all the cruelties and hardships this land inflicts upon them, these remarkable women love Nebraska. If destiny conspires to pluck them up and carry them off to faraway places, their hearts remain rooted in the thick black loam of the prairie. They pine for that terrible and beautiful place like lovesick maidens who never recover from an adolescent romance. The change of seasons pulls their hearts back to the awesome land that wooed them so roughly. Like the majestic sandhill cranes, their souls migrate year after year back to the cruel and fragrant Eden of the Platte River Valley, a world where the Pawnees called the happy hunting grounds. DuQuette men must be a lot like Nebraska, for it takes a Nebraska woman to love us, to endure us, to inexplicably draw strength from our brash insensitivity and other unmanly DuQuette virtues lesser women might mistake for self-absorbed stupidity. In 1966, my Nebraska odyssey ended. I returned to California immediately after high school graduation and began classes at Orange Coast College in Costa Mesa. College life in Southern California in 1966 and 67 was a very rich and colorful experience, little of which had anything to do with academics. The popularity of mind-expanding drugs and the social and political upheavals of the day, triggered by the civil rights movement and the war in Vietnam, were far more interesting to me than my English and drama classes. I was profoundly affected by my experiences with LSD, and soon began to seriously turn my attention to the study and practice of Eastern mysticism, especially Hindu philosophy and yoga. My brother Mark was my mystical fellow traveler on most of these psychedelic journeys. He would often volunteer to be my sane and sober babysitter and guide while I tripped. I, on alternate occasions, would do the same for him. The experiences were spiritual journeys we took very seriously, and the deeper we plunged into the depths of our own psyches, the more we knew that self-realization was the most important thing a human being can achieve during his or her lifetime on Earth. One afternoon, the day before a full moon, we decided to drive out to the desert and take a massive dose of LSD together. We watched the full moon set in the west and the sun rise in the east. We vowed we would not return from the desert until we were holy men. I wrote about this event in greater length in an earlier autobiography, That's My Life with the Spirits. So I won't bore you with the details here. I will instead jump to the quiet moments a few hours after that eternal day in the desert. We managed to drive safely back to Costa Mesa late in the afternoon. We were still quite high, but confident enough in our ability to maintain in public to visit our favorite tavern. It was there, sitting on the most comfortable bar stool in the universe, my acid-soaked brain still soaring through the rarefied clouds of Technicolor consciousness, that I realized I would be incapable of safely controlling the awesome and terrible nuclear fusion of consciousness that was taking place in my cranium. I started to see the big picture. If I were to continue my incarnational adventure, I would need something, someone, to ground me, to anchor me, to hold my feet to the ground before I exploded spectacularly but prematurely on the launch pad of life. I needed a Nebraska woman. I had dated Constance on and off during our junior and senior years of high school in Nebraska. When I returned to California, we kept in touch by old-fashioned letters. We were friends. She liked my progressive politics, and I liked her hair. We certainly never discussed marriage. But now I could not imagine a future without her. More accurately, I saw quite clearly that there wasn't a future without her. Perched high on the oracular tripod of my psychedelic bar stool, I saw the future set in stone, as fixed and immutable as the past. I called her from the payphone near the pinball machine and proposed marriage. To this day, I can't really tell you why I asked, and to this day, she doesn't know why she said yes. But like traditional Hindu couples whose parents sealed the marriage contract when they were babies, we dutifully surrendered to our destinies then and there. We've been married for 47 years. That's when this was, we've been married 53 years now. Neither one of us can tell you exactly why. Do we love each other? Yes, of course we love each other. Are we happy? Well, sometimes yes and sometimes no. But at least we've grown wise enough to realize that ultimately one person can never make another person happy. And even if we could love, and even if we could, love is bigger than happiness. Each individual in this world, whether married or single, is responsible for his or her own condition of happiness or unhappiness. Now, what does all this have to do with homemade magic? My answer is simple. The edifice of my life, my home, my work, my magic, is built upon the foundation that is the love, the support, the opposition, the criticism, the irritation, the wisdom, and the ruthless condemnation of this Nebraska maid. Constance is a supernatural force of nature, an awesome and terrible magical being, a goddess, a devil, an angel, a harpy, a demon. She is also the archetypal wife, mother, and grandmother. But greater than all these things, she is her own unique universe. She is, in every relevant sense of the term, a saint. Take it from me. It's not easy being the mortal husband of a saint. Any envy you might feel for me by my extraordinary good matrimonial fortune must be tempered by an outpouring of pity. For even though I'm blessed with many unique and admirable qualities, I'm not a saint. It's important that you remain mindful of this cruel irony as I attempt to relate a few of our family adventures in the pages of this book. Constance and I took no vows to each other during our homemade wedding ceremony so long ago. We promised each other nothing. Nonetheless, for over 47 years, 53 years, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, this Nebraska maid has been and remains the home in my homemade magic. And that's where we'll stop today. Tomorrow we'll pick up with part 1, initiation. Continue to have a good weekend, everyone, and we'll see you bright and early Monday morning at 10 o'clock. In the meanwhile, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.